This is Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Buzz. So excited to be speaking with Peter Sarsgaard about Presumed Innocent. How are you, Peter?
Thank you for having me. I'm really good.
You already seem more pleasant than your character, and I'm curious what you like about him, if anything.
Oh, I like him. Uh, I think he's very honest. I think he's almost to a fault can't say anything but what he thinks. Um, I think that a lot of the, I mean, it's funny that people have this reaction to this character who's like in a situation that, first of all, he would never be in life, being forced to prosecute in a case where he is totally entangled with all of the people. That is not normal. Um, but I think he really does try to put his own envy aside. He's basically prosecuting the prom king, star football player, quarterback of The Office. And of course, there's a lot of envy and jealousy. But I think, given the facts of the case, almost anyone would believe what I believe.
I think that's fair, and I do think this is position that we're, supposed to be rooting for Rusty, even though even if he's not guilty, he definitely did a lot of stuff that is illegal, immoral, like
Got
a lot of
people
there's a lot of
pregnant and I mean, it's like endless. I'm just the guy who's living with his cat who occasionally says something a little bit out of line because his envy got ahead of him, and people are like, it just goes to show what good storytelling does, though. It's just like when the writers write the stories, they tell the audience what to think, where to be in terms of subjectively where they're looking from, you know. And I'm the only person that's in the shoes of Tommy Malta, so the story is very different to me than it is to anyone else. I encounter this all the time with this role.
well, you also have obviously a personal and family relationship with Jake Gyllenhaal. What was it like being so much at odds in these roles?
I mean, Jake and I have been in a number of things together, and I think we've always been at odds. So I don't know if we've ever truly been like exactly on the same team. Even back to Jarhead, I think we were like not quite on the same team. Um, you know, in truth, Jake and I could play best friends. We could play mortal enemies. That's just part of being an actor. The thing that helps is that when you're comfortable with someone else, it's much easier to act with them. When you know that the other person respects you as much as you respect them, then you feel more comfortable making mistakes in front of them and trying out things that are outlandish, which I certainly did pretty often on this. And yeah, that's the main difference. Support. I've
And
acted
it
with a
was
lot of my family,
Is that something you'd recommend to people who haven't yet tried that?
only if they're talented.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, there was some Q&A, I think it was at Sundance years ago. I don't remember what film it was for. It might have been Experiment or something else, where you were talking about how you're often cast in these disgruntled, angry roles. You must be very good at this kind of role, but then in real life, you're obviously a much nicer guy. But there's something just about some of the roles you play, and I like the way that you're framing it here. That we see a lot of anger from Tommy, but also it's righteous anger, and it makes sense. Like it's what we should
Who
all be
wouldn't
feeling.
be? Everything points to the fact that your office worker killed another office worker. Everything, every video, she's pregnant, all of it. I mean, who wouldn't? I'm not, and I'm not that far off the mark in the end. So,
That's true. Well, I do like there is at least some sort of positive relationship with Oti Fagbenle's, character Nico, where at least they're, on the same side, even if they don't always agree about the methods. He's somebody who's been all across so many different TV shows recently. What is it like getting to share scenes and I guess, aside with him?
it's so surprising when you do, I just saw him and we were doing some publicity together and he has this British accent. It just he never ever did it around me. I honestly don't know that person. I also told him today, I was like, you act a little different with that accent. Like, I don't know. I guess it's like that with all of us, where with our original accents, that it brings out a different color in us. I mean, one day someone will let me play Southern and I can show my true self.
Do you think that the location of this show and your character's specificity is very relevant to the part, or this is the kind of story that could happen anywhere across America?
Well, I'm from, Southern Illinois in St. Louis and lived there for the first 10 years of my life, went to college there. That neck of the woods, I would say Chicago and St. Louis share quite a bit. Is very familiar to me. I don't even feel like I need to act it. I'm doing another thing right now where I play somebody from St. Louis, actually, and it's just like, uh, I actually frequently feel like for me with regionalisms, because I live so many different places, I feel like I can do most of them. You know, I'm trying to think of what would be the hardest sort of thing. I guess I might be somebody from LA. I don't really understand what it means to be from LA.
Actually, I live in LA, but I'm not from LA, so can't quite answer that. But
Yeah, or even I think having lived in New York since 1993, I'm mostly aware of how much I'm not a New Yorker. I'm not a New Yorker because I've lived there since 1993. I met this woman the other day. It's a woman I know from the neighborhood, and we walk our dogs. And she walked past, and I'd been talking to her for a bit. My wife was like, "That's a real New Yorker." I was like, "That is a real New Yorker." Like, you know it when you see it.
um, well, this show was very popular. I know it's been renewed for a second season, but we don't have a lot of details aside from sort of what the source material might be. Do you feel like there's just something like lightning in a bottle about this case that having Tommy come back wouldn't feel right, or would you want to if there was the opportunity to be part of whatever came next?
I don't, I'm, you know, it's more just an in general thing for me is I've never played a part where I wanted to do it for longer than this, including like on stage. I've only ever done runs for like 6 months, maybe at the most. Um, Never like done a play and then transferred it. I've never done more than one season of a show, TV show. So I mean, if I'm allowed to keep doing it this way and making a living, a decent living doing it, I would love to keep doing this way where, yeah, just because I had a good experience doesn't mean I need to repeat the good experience, you know?
Well, I do know that you've been in a number of limited series like Dope Sick, Looming Tower, and that does make a lot of sense because I think there is an impactful sort of arc. I think what's sort of interesting about
Or
this
The
show,
Killing,
though,
even. The Killing, I did
of
one
course,
season. Yeah.
right. The Killing is also the most interesting, perplexing TV specimen, just in terms of its multiple cancellations and renewals. Just because that show is so dark and sort of strange, and for like out of all the shows, it's so intriguing. But that definitely is an interesting one to look back at.
Yeah, I was a fan of it. I guess it's that sort of Scandinavian noir thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. But no, there's a lot of interesting stuff out there. I've enjoyed sort of seeing the variety of roles that you have, looking at September 5 and Memory, which are these two very serious, contemplative films, and then something like Coup, which is a lot sillier, but also has like a tinge of darkness to it.
And maybe a social commentary. It's a Coup's like a satire, about the times. Um, I'm actually doing a sci-fi thing right now, and then I'm doing a comedy right now, and I'm doing in the fall this movie Erosion with this director Michael Koch, who's Swiss. We're shooting it in Switzerland, and I'm really excited for that one. That's going to be it's yeah, I'm really excited for that one.
I think one of the first times I saw you was probably, in Garden State, which I went to while I was in high school, and I feel like that is even so different from everything you just mentioned and all the roles we've talked about. How often do you sort of, relate back to that film?
Well, people come up to me and say things about that film sometimes. I think it depends on the length of my hair. Um, you know, when you're an actor, like what you look like, if you're working enough, you kind of lose touch with what your personal style would be. So right now I might have a little bit of like shattered glass hair going on. Um, but yeah, I'm proud of a lot of the things that I've done. They just had, I guess, was it the 20th anniversary of Garden State? They had a concert here in LA. I couldn't come to the thing, but apparently it was a real success to raise money.
Are there any roles that you're particularly proud of that no one ever asks you about that you wish people would bring up more?
The Dying Gaul, that one. Uh, I also, at the time, I loved doing Center of the World, and not because of the sex or anything like that, but because that was the first time I ever worked on a film where it really felt like it was being made on the fly. Like, Paul Auster and Siri Husfeld were writing the script, but we had a director, Wayne Wang, who was like changing everything when we went to go do it. We were shooting it on digital, but those little handheld digital cameras. Um, I really enjoyed that one. I actually really enjoyed this movie that I did with Lodge Kerrigan that was shot entirely out of focus. Shot it for 9 weeks, and they got all the insurance money back and remade the movie with somebody else, I think Damian Lewis. But the experience of making that movie was taught me a lot about myself as an actor. And my wife was in it also, actually. But you can't see it. It's not available. It was shot out of focus. Or there was a
Not on purpose.
not on purpose. There was some, irreversible negative damage situation. They never tell you exactly what the problem is, but they got their insurance money back. There was some catastrophic event.
Well, certainly intriguing. Well, I'm curious because, especially because you've starred in such a range of projects, and because you don't like the idea of coming back for, another season of TV. What are you watching these days? What's really impressed you recently?
Mm, I really like Adolescence. I thought that was phenomenal. I would like to work with that person. Um, Also, the type of acting that's required. I love the idea of doing something kind of all in one go. You know, I love that episode of The Bear. I think it's in season 1 or 2. That I think the whole show was a oneer also. I think they did a oneer on The Bear. I like that kind of thing. Like, not just, I think because it really relies on the actors. Um, it's more fun to do something like that than other things that are maybe more high profile that are huge movies that go all over the world where that have been edited and mixed and AI'd and to the point where it's your contribution is very faint. So I'm always just wanting to be in it with somebody, working with people, collaborating. To me, it's an intimate thing and might even feels like a little old-fashioned sometimes the way that I expect to do it. Like somebody told me the other day, my driver actually out here said, so what movies have you been in that are like really big popular movies? Because those are the only ones I watch. And I said, a lot of the movies I make are not trying to be popular. And he said, why would anyone do that? Why would you make a movie that's where its goal wasn't to like make a lot of money and be the most popular movie? And I said, because, you know, the things that are complicated to say, difficult to understand, only for certain people are still worth saying. Like the things that we can all agree on are pretty bland. Life positive, death negative. I'm not even sure if everybody agrees on that at this point. But like, the smaller the movie is, the more specific the content can be. And he was still like, you lost me. I have no idea why you're doing what you're doing. I started thinking like, yeah, I guess it's like I'm into something a little bit different.
I like that you have a sincere appreciation for your craft and everything that goes into it. And I thank you for taking some time to talk to me today.
Thank you so much. Yeah.